According to reports, the new Vikings coach Kevin O'Connell wants to keep Kirk Cousins, and the Vikings are trending that way. So we're going to talk about that as well as a little Mock Draft Monday here on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
Ooh-wee! You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed the Super Bowl. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at LukeBraunNFL. Show is on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen every single day. And our coach won a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, it wasn't with us. Not yet. Congratulations to Rams fans, whatever, whoever's listening. So let's talk, though, about the report that came out early on Super Bowl Sunday from Tom Pelissero, and then I think Ian Rappaport endorsed it, that the Vikings are trending toward keeping Kevin O'Connell. His staff is not Kirk Cousins. His staff is not entirely fleshed out yet. Deshae Townsend actually balked. We actually told Patrick Peterson at Radio Row that he was going to be the new D-backs coach, and then he actually has changed his mind since then. So my apologies if Patrick Peterson is listening. My apologies for lying to you, to your face. But interesting thing anyways. By the way, Patrick Peterson told me at Radio Row that he wants to stay a Viking, point blank. He said that on his show too, so it's not like super his own podcast, so it's not super breaking news, but still nice to hear like directly, point blank. But I digress. The staff isn't fully fleshed out. It will probably, a lot of those will be made official either today or tomorrow when Kevin O'Connell is made official and they have a whole PR press release and stuff and they can get all the things signed. That might take a minute, or it might already be done by the time you listen to this. Who knows? But either way, that's imminent. But the report is that they are going to try to work something out with Kirk Cousins' deal. Now, there's a couple of quick caveats to this. Everything you hear this time of year could definitely be a contract negotiation leverage tactic thing, right? Or a trade negotiation leverage tactic. The Vikings go put it out there via all the insiders and say, yeah, we're totally super high on Cousins. We're not going to part with him unless you give us a king's ransom, just to get people to offer more when, trade negotiations start, which always, everybody's always calling everybody that. There's always a market and you're just trying to inflate it. Or it's just, it's real and they want to keep him. But of course, getting the contract done is a hurdle, and that might be something they can't figure out. They might also be able to figure it out, but that's still something that needs to be done. And it's certainly, I think it's 80-20 that they get the contract figured out if they all want to, but there's still that 20%. And it's a probability we have to at least mention and acknowledge. Assuming all of that works out the way that the Vikings intend it, it means the Vikings think Kirk Cousins is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. We've been over this a million times. I don't necessarily agree, but that kind of tells us something about the way the Vikings are trying to build their team. They're building it around Kirk Cousins, and all that means is we just kind of have to suss out the sense of urgency. Because here is the reality that I've always said. Whether they admit it or not, the Vikings are in a rebuild. Their roster needs to be rebuilt. They have holes on their roster. They're missing about half of a defense. They need a couple offensive linemen. They probably could use another skill player or two. They have holes on that roster. That is not going to get solved in one offseason unless you do something similar to what the Rams did, where you go fully all in, you go get everybody's veterans that want out or whatever, go get every Odell Beckham and Jalen Ramsey you can find. And basically mortgage away all your draft picks and essentially resolve to be a team that doesn't build their team in the draft. That worked great for the Rams. Obviously, they just won the Super Bowl. Is that replicable? Is a different question, right? But either way, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think that they're going to go in some weird all-in retool direction. Here's the deal. Rick Spielman just got fired for essentially trying to hold together with duct tape and bubble gum this ship that he had built a few years ago but wasn't able to kind of refurbish with better draft talent and stuff because of various things, first rounders not working out and guys getting old, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, they tried to patch this over the last 2 years with 1-year deals and sort of rental free agents and bargain bin stuff. The Bashad Breelans of the world trying to, get in. You can just play like decent cornerback and we can deal with that until we get a real replacement. And that sort of, there was a lot of papering over and a lot of temporary solutions. Let's just bring in Anthony Barr for 2 more years, and we'll just get whatever we get out of him. There wasn't a build toward this is the core of our team and what's the future. They have a core of the team, and I do think they still view that they have a core of the team. They've got Dalvin Cook and Jefferson and Danielle Hunter and Eric Kendricks and, Harrison Smith for as long as you have them. There's a core to the team, right? But you have so many holes on the roster that to try to solve them all at once with the resources available to the Vikings would be a pretty bad way to solve them. You could kind of only get so good of a player unless you really, really hit on a guy, unless you can find a way to get on a $1 million deal, some free agent that doesn't get signed till May or something. You'd have to just be so good at playing the market. And that's just unrealistic. I think trying to do that would be irresponsible. It's just unrealistic to expect, we'll just draft a perfect class and then fill all of our roster holes in the first year. I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't think that that's a responsible way to go about this. And so here's what I think is going to happen. I think the Vikings are definitely are trying to build around Kirk Cousins. I do believe in that Tom Pelissero report. But I think that they're going to try to build a little more responsibly. And I do think, whether they admit it or not, 2022 is going to be, don't call it a rebuilding year, call it a transition year, where you're just not going to solve every problem at once. You can try, but it would require either just spreading your resources way too thin or mortgaging the future so much. And it's really hard to see a first-year head coach and GM immediately go into, we'll just suck for the next 4 years if this doesn't work out. I don't think that's going to be the case. So I think that they're going to try to build around Kirk Cousins. So what does that look like? That's what I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And plus we have Mock Draft Monday to do. So get hyped for that. But first, let me talk to you about the best tasting protein bar on the planet. It is mid-February now. It's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. And if you're still going on your New Year's resolution, I commend you. I am not so strong a person. If it's getting harder, if your stamina, your willpower is starting to erode, Built Bar can be the solution for you. If you've tried the Puffs, they are awesome. They're marshmallowy covered in chocolate. They're delicious, but they figured out, I don't know what it is with the collagen protein, the way that they do this, but they figured it out. It tastes like you're eating a marshmallow candy bar, but it's not that bad for you. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and then 17 grams of protein. So it actually works after a workout as well, and you're going to want to eat it. It's not one of these really chalky, nasty, oat nightmares that you can call a protein bar. No, you're going to want to have this. It's going to be like a candy bar. It comes in mint brownie, coconut almond, even white chocolate cookies and cream for this month. All delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So Kevin O'Connell has a philosophy that shows up time and time again every time we actually get him to talk to somebody in the media that can write stuff up about him. And they ask him, what's your philosophy? What does your offense look like? And that question has come up a couple of times, of course, out of curiosity. What would this look like if you were in McVay's shadow? Of course, for us, but also in the Rams a little bit. Hey, who is Kevin O'Connell? Step out of the shadow of Sean McVay and tell me who you are. But also in Washington, when he was the offensive coordinator and he was sort of gradually gaining more and more power over time over that 2019 season as other things didn't work out. And the answer, there's always some through line there. A lot of it is getting the quarterback in rhythm and making the quarterback feel protected. And it's all about nurturing the quarterback. And that's the way I'll put it. It's about putting the quarterback in a situation where he can be his best self, and it's all centered on the quarterback. And I think there's room to disagree with that and say, well, it's a team game, though. You probably should try to nurture everybody and make sure everybody can be their best self, not just the quarterback. But I guess if you are going to pick one person, the quarterback would be the guy to pick. But I digress. He is going to do the thing around Kirk Cousins that Kirk Cousins fans want the Vikings to do. That I think is where this all comes out. Assuming the Vikings keep Kirk Cousins like it seems like they're going to, this is going to be a team built around Kirk and what Kirk needs. And the other thing that I kind of glossed over is making the quarterback feel protected. And he always puts it that way, and I always find that interesting that that's how he puts it, because it's not necessarily about, some point about how under pressure passer rating goes down by this much or whatever. It's a lot more about making the quarterback feel like he's protected. Look, pressure ruins plays, sacks, of course, ruin plays. Those are all bad, and limiting it is good, but it's like a more nebulous point about making the quarterback feel like he's protected, making him feel like the front is not his greatest worry. And that does align really well with what Kirk Cousins wants to do. Cousins, and he's explained this before at the Blitz Summit last offseason, he will read the front and where the defensive line is and the linebackers and stuff pre-snap on his way up to the line of scrimmage. Basically, that's the first thing he's looking at, and then he works his way. He goes defensive line, the front, and then he looks at the linebackers, and then he looks at like the secondary, and he works his way back, and then he keeps his attention on the secondary post-snap where the play is. And he kind of trusts that the protection that was set and his teammates are going to do his job, and he kind of trusts that the protection is right, which is why there are so many sacks that it looks like he didn't even see the guy coming, even though maybe he should have seen the guy coming, and it's because he places that full-on faith in the front, and I criticize that all the time about him. However, the way that meshes, like that's a weakness, I think, of his, and the way that meshes with Kevin O'Connell is, I think, where you kind of see what the Vikings are seeing in this. Where O'Connell talks about, I want the quarterback to feel that way. I want him to feel like he doesn't have to worry about the protection so that he can focus on the secondary and focus on the coverage and reading his progression and focus on what's going on downfield instead of having to worry about if a stunt is coming or if there's some guy going to come up the A gap or whatever, and be able to trust that. So, of course, this is all a great and noble thing, right? It would be super awesome if the quarterback was just never under pressure. That'd be great. You'd win every game. But how to get there, right? And there's a bunch of different ways. But this can give us a preview of what kind of contender the Vikings are going to try to build. And I worded that very carefully. What they are going to try to build a contender. Nobody's trying to build a just okay team. They're going to try to build a Super Bowl contender, somebody that can be in the playoffs every year and be the Chiefs, be in the playoffs and be scary every year and always have a puncher's chance at the title. They are going to try to build that. Whether it works out, of course, that's why you watch the games. But part of that is going to start with not only offensive line. Of course, the easiest way to do this, or the most straightforward, I guess, way to do this, but probably the hardest way to do it, is just get better offensive linemen. Of course, it is so easy. Why didn't I think of that? Just simply get good offensive linemen in the building. But of course, there's going to be a resource problem of how do you do that? Do you draft more? Do you just hope that guys like Ezra Cleveland develop? What do you do with like matching that with the run game and stuff? But I guess that should bring me to O'Connell wanting to run a more varied running scheme. He isn't pure wide zone. And the run game coordinator he's going to bring in here, Curtis Modkins, also doesn't run pure wide zone. Munchak is a zone guy. They did bring in an O-line coach, Chris Cooper, that does teach mostly wide zone technique. So I think it's still going to be the staple, but it's not going to be everything. And because it's not everything, it means that you need to have linemen with a certain amount of power. So the guys that are a little lighter, that can get bowled over a little bit, the Bradburys of the world. This was Riley Reif. He was never the most stout, powerful guy. Go to all the busts you want, the Drew Samias, whatever. Those guys aren't going to be as useful, and they're not going to fit as well because you need to have someone with a little bit more of a diverse skill set. Bradbury in particular, very much a zone guy. A zone guy a lot of people don't even like in a pure zone scheme. Add more responsibilities and ask him to do things he's not good at more, it's not a very good fit. So my guess for him is going to be camp competition, let him play out the last year of his deal, and then he's going to walk. So that's part of it. A reconstruction of the offensive line so you get guys that are built around pass protection. You would hope, right? But again, way easier said than done, right? Let's just go get all the pass protection linemen that are all just sitting out there doing nothing. Yeah, that's easy, right? But there's a lot of other things to do, and some of them are more schematic, right? There's also things like prioritizing pass protection in your running back decision. Alexander Madison, I thought, had a really rough year in terms of pass protection, in terms of closer to the beginning of the year. Later in the year, he got a lot better. But he had a rough year early in the year in terms of whiffing on blocks. He would get to the right place and he would just like totally whiff. He'd lunge at the guy and just like totally swing at air. Somebody like Kene Wangu needs to learn pass protection, or else he's not going to get on the field. And that was kind of what prevented him from getting on the field last year too. So he needs to improve at that. And that's going to become even more of a priority, because as we saw in the Super Bowl just this Sunday, running back pass protection is really, really important. Same thing with tight ends and stuff. Maybe not so much a run blocking tight end, but somebody who can block in the pass is going to matter. And that's going to be just that much more of an important part of the evaluation for those tertiary skill players. One thing I'm really interested to see, we talked last week about this to Solomon Wilcots and a couple other people too, is how they're going to approach play action. Kirk Cousins is a play action quarterback. It is his identity is that he's good at play action. He's good at turning around, faking a handoff, turning his body back around, and then throwing off of an angle that's usually uncomfortable. That is his superpower. It is his greatest talent. But Kevin O'Connell lost the OC job in Washington because he didn't want to build a play action offense. He wanted to instead use passes to set up more passes. I've explained this a little bit last week, but in brief, you run play action. You fake a run play to manipulate a defender to get them going one way, and then the pass play goes the other way. You make them zig, then you zag. A pass play can also make them zig, and then you can zag with a different pass play. And that's going to be, I think, the way that Kevin O'Connell wants to do this. And it's, get the quarterback in rhythm, make the quarterback, again, feel protected, use quick game, 3-step drops, a quick pass, 3-step drop and throw, that's a 1.5 seconds. If an offensive lineman knows that he just has to hold up for a 1.5 seconds, he will take a much more aggressive stance. And that aggressive stance is going to be much easier to win from. It's just not easier to hold up the block. But if you know you don't have to, you can do that. So that kind of thing can help the offensive line. So it's also about making the offensive line's job easier, and maybe putting a little bit more in the hands of the pre-snap read of your quarterback and a little bit more on the wide receivers and stuff. But yeah, you got Justin Jefferson. If we can trust KJ Osborne too, and whatever we can get left from Adam Thielen, maybe we can trust that. And Irv Smith, of course. So maybe we can trust that a little bit better, put more on the receivers, less on the offensive line. That'll all be great. So those are just some of the things I can think of with Kevin O'Connell that are principles I think the Vikings will stick to. And what this means is it's going to influence the way that the Vikings approach free agency and the draft and all this stuff. Again, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I honestly wouldn't be too surprised to see them focus entirely on defense and just kind of say, okay, this one's going to be a rough year. We'll see if we can't make a run at it, but we're going to have an incomplete roster this year. If the Vikings have a complete roster as they go into 2022, my jaw will be on the floor. I just don't think it's plausible. We're going to do our best in cap exercises down the road. Some of that is going to involve a mock draft, which is the next thing we are going to do. That is Mock Draft Monday. It is time. First off, let's talk about BetOnline. I hope y'all had fun betting on the Super Bowl. I certainly did. I hit a couple of silly props, like Sean McVay being the first coach to be shown on the broadcast, and the Super Bowl MVP thanking his teammates first. Hit some less silly, but still very fun props, like Matt Stafford over 5.5 rushing yards. I believe he hit. I think he had 6 at the end of the game after that final kneel down. What's funny is that if the Bengals had called a timeout and made the Rams do another kneel down, I think I would have lost that bet. And I actually got Odell Beckham anytime touchdown scorer was another one I did well on. Did pretty well on my Super Bowl prop bets. Tell me how yours went for all of the latest odds, totals, player performance, props, whatever you can get. You can go to betonline.net. It's the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, news, everything this season. And it's not just football. It's your best source for hockey, boxing, UFC, Olympics, all sorts of coverage and information. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, welcome to Mock Draft Monday. Here's what we do here on Mock Draft Monday. We do a mock draft. I'm just doing one round for now. I'm using the Pro Football Network simulator. That's the thing that matters to you. We're going to use that all off season. And I don't think I'm going to do a trade today. I'm just not feeling like doing that kind of thing. I am allowing myself to do trades, but I'm not like forcing myself to really evaluate all of them or whatever. And we are gonna look for this. So here's something that I think the Vikings are going to need with the McVay system. One of McVay's favorite things to do with Cooper Kupp was choice route. And a choice route, it's like you might know it as an option route. They require a lot of agility. They require you to really set something up, go really far outside, then cut inside. And sometimes they require you to, stem your route directly at the cornerback. And then you have to go left or right And depending on what your read is, but you also have to set them up at the routes, at the breaking point of your route. You also have to set them up to go the other way so that you can actually create separation. That requires a ton of agility. So here's what I think. I don't think the Vikings necessarily have this particular style of receiver. None of their receivers have an agility problem or anything like that. Like Justin Jefferson's fine, and of course his routes are amazing. And I think Osborne's fine and Thielen are all fine in this, but I want like a shifty, stupid little twerp type receiver. And I am going to see if I can't find this. There's a lot of receivers I'm noticing available at 12. This is what I think keeps happening. Chris Olave keeps being available. Drake London is available. Jameson Williams is available. There's a lot of these guys. So I went and I looked through to see which of those guys kind of fits that description the best. Who has the agility that I need to run those sorts of concepts, and I think brings a dimension to the Vikings passing attack that they don't have right now. So I'm looking for a receiver that's going to give me that dimension. So somebody like Drake London isn't necessarily going to check that box. He's big and he's a good receiver and whatever. It seems like a fine prospect, but I'm looking for a particular skill set here. And that brings me to Chris Olave and Jameson Williams that seem like they have fairly similar skill sets, a lot of athleticism and explosion and stuff, not necessarily the best run blockers. That's not the worst thing for a wide receiver. And what it seems like the main difference is, at least off of very cursory research, is that Chris Olave maybe needs a little more physicality and Jameson Williams needs a little bit more polish in his routes. I want to take the guy with more polish in his routes because, again, this is going to be a very precise role, and that's going to be Chris Olave. So Chris Olave is, he also seems to have a talent for kind of finding those soft spots in zones, and I think that understanding of coverages and that just the football IQ, I guess, that comes with seems to be really important for this like choice route role. And of course, this isn't just the choice route role. It's just a really important thing that I would love for a wide receiver to come in and do. So then you'd have Olav on top of Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne, and then Adam Thielen for as long as you get him. And then after he retires, those are your three. And you got Irv Smith, Dalvin Cook. That's a good skill core. Like, that's really exciting. So I'd be really into it. I'm definitely open to taking a wide receiver here, even though I just talked about, they need corners like the Dickens. They need an edge rusher like the Dickens. They probably could use some offensive linemen. They need a linebacker really bad, a safety really bad. Like, they need stuff really bad here. And even though wide receiver isn't necessarily the most pressing need, I'm still okay with taking that because you're not going to solve all of these needs with your first pick. And if you try to do that, if you try to chase needs on your roster with the first overall pick in a world where you're in this kind of pseudo rebuild thing that we aren't really admitting, but they're in, that is, if you can't chase needs in that. And that's why I don't necessarily think, like, if you are trying to compete in 2022 and 2022 alone, I would say your first round pick has to be a corner. I just don't think that there's anything out. Like, if you're trying to say Kirk Cousins makes us a Super Bowl contender if we can just fix up this roster, I think you need to get a corner in the first round, or find a way to flip your first rounder into like Xavier Howard or something. But like, that's a really irresponsible way to do it because you can't pick a corner and also an edge rusher and also a linebacker and also a safety and also a wide receiver and also an offensive lineman, like you're chasing needs, but there's so many other needs that by the time you fill those, you're going to have another need at corner, and that you're just going to kind of constantly be chasing your tail. So I like the idea of just find a guy that will have utility in specifically the team we're trying to build and take him instead of trying to be a completionist about it. And I guess that's the real lesson I want you to take from this show is the Vikings shouldn't be completionists here in this particular rebuild or retool or whatever makes you feel good to call it. They shouldn't try to complete the roster in one off season. To do that would spread their resources too thin, and it would not set them up to actually be able to build a contender. They would always just build a very fragile team you can't skip, like they wouldn't be a circled win. They would just always be like a 6-win team you kind of have to take seriously. And you, of course you don't want to build that, right? So I just want them to build somebody like Chris Olave would have a defined role in the Vikings offense, and it would be a useful role. It would be a very explosive role and something that would really add a dimension to their offense. And that's why I would take that pick with the mock draft Monday. These are going to start to get more serious now that we're out of the playoffs. And especially once the staff comes together, we start getting into cap stuff, which maybe we'll get to this week. We'll start, maybe next week. but then we'll start talking about contracts, like all that stuff. So this should be a fun week. It's Twitter Tuesday tomorrow. You can find a link for that in the show notes. There's just a Google form, or you can send an email to lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. You can hit me on Twitter with that too, at Luke Braun NFL, at Locked On Vikings. I will see you all tomorrow with that. In the meantime, check out the Locked On Bets podcast. And as always, Skol.